Marshelle.
Hi, Bridget. This episode,
We're going to talk about
what are the things that are going on in our lives?
it's kind of like maybe this might be like,
Yeah, sorta, kinda.
life lesson.
Hi. Well, hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. How are
I'm
you?
like saluting you. I'm good. I'm really happy to be back.
I can't believe that it's been as long as it has been, but at the same time it felt right. So
Yeah,
whatever.
it
This is
did.
where we're at.
You know, yeah. I mean, unprecedented times. That's
There's a lot going on in the world.
a
There
lot
really
going
is.
on in the world.
A lot to process. A lot to make space for.
That's a good way to put it. Mm-hmm.
So we're considering this season 2 of Yeah,
Season
Sorta, Kinda.
2.
And I'm Bridget.
Oh, Marshelle.
It looks so political when you...
I know, I was like, no, I'm like Nixon. I was like, season 2. I'm not Nixon, it's season 2. If you can't see, I was doing the Nixon thing accidentally.
Oh, yeah,
the
because
peace
not
sign.
everybody is watching this on YouTube. Some
That's
of you
right.
are just listening to us everywhere you get your podcasts,
We're
including
even on iHeartRadio.
iHeartRadio.
How cool is that, guys?
Yeah,
My husband's quite impressed by that. He's like, how
feels
the hell
good
did you
to be
guys get on
everywhere.
iHeartRadio? That was really you're not.
And if this is the first you've ever heard of us and you want to know how we got on iHeartRadio, listen to episodes 1 through 16.
Exactly. About life lessons and unknowable things with two best friends. Coffee-fueled conversations.
Coffee-fueled conversations. Cheers. You got your coffee
Cheers.
today.
Who are you?
What's
Don't
your
be a
mug say?
prick? Is that
I'm
on your-
Don't Be a Prick today. What's yours?
Mine is Not Today, Satan, which is quite appropriate for what we're going to discuss today, I think.
I think so. So I told my mom the topic.
Buckle up,
She
guys.
was like, I was like, Mom, we're going to talk about remote viewing. She's like, why? That's weird. I was like, yeah, that's exactly why we're going to talk about it. It's weird. It's an unknowable thing. It's exactly what Marshelle and I love to discuss. So
It's our wheelhouse, man. I mean, like,
Yeah.
we love that stuff. I mean,
we've
come
been
on.
stuffing our brain with all sorts of remote viewing information, and we're just gonna. We don't really entirely know everything that. Sorry, there's a plant here. I can't do much about it. We don't know entirely everything that each other knows about the topic.
Yeah.
So that we can just kind of discuss it.
We're gonna have
together.
a conversation because it's a really heavy. It's a broad topic. There's so much out there about it, and at about 95% of what you could find on the internet is actually wrong. I mean, it's a different. We're talking about technical controlled remote viewing, and then spinning off from there a little bit about what they discovered about life.
I
that
feel
you and I both
like
find
the
relevant.
differentiation is to try to say this isn't gonna. I know we talk about some weird things, but remote viewing can actually be incredibly scientific.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so esoteric as some people make it out to be. You're not like having to put yourself in some special state. It's
Altered
actually
state,
much more of a very natural part of the human experience because it delves into the unconscious aspects, which Carl Jung talked a lot about. So to me, it's almost more psychology or even what is it, parapsychology? then?
Parapsychology. And
Yeah.
a lot of when we were doing this, a lot of the research I found was that a lot of the scientists that were actually doing the study were nuclear physicists. So,
Which are really smart people.
yeah.
I don't know if you've heard.
I think there's a lot of scientific, but I think what they were inspired by was you can't deny like that part of ourselves, like when a mother knows that something's happened to her child. They were saying like, what is that? Or when we know, when you know who's on the phone, who's calling you before you even see who it is. Like, what is
Right.
that? What is that part of all of us
Right.
that we have those moments? So and then they wanted-
Extrasensory perception, for example, ESP. I think that's kind of where it started, the remote viewing. And remote viewing turned into what this particular study and method of approach, that was the term that they started to use.
right.
But, like, we're talking, do you want to go historical a little bit? Like,
Yeah, just a
early
little.
70s?
Yeah, it started out in the early 70s. It was
The
basically-
Russians were into this. We were
It's
like,
just-
hey, what are you guys doing?
It's basically because back then it was the Soviet Union. The Soviets were using psychic spies, as they put it, was it psyops or psychic spies, on us. to find out so like, oh yeah? So
they were doing psychic spies and they were trying to like manipulate too, right?
They did more like remote influencing, which meaning they were trying to influence.
See if they could like stop someone's heart.
Yeah, probably.
Right?
But I didn't read that, but I didn't even thought about that. But that application, as they said, technically they always called it applications, but also how to control maybe someone's decision making, i.e. the president of the United States,
right?
or generals, in the armies and navies and all of that, in our military.
Yeah, so I feel like our government agencies were like, what's this that they're trying to do?
Right.
For one, we should be paying attention. And for two, if they're onto something, we should also be conducting our own studies.
By God, we needed to be doing this. Yeah. And so like in the 70s, I think it was Ingo Swann and a couple of other people started this thing. Was it Stanford? What did you call it? Stanford
Research Institute.
Thank you, because I keep trying to say Stanford University. Stanford Research Institute. They started doing this, and then it turned into so basically our government was funding it for 20 years.
Yeah.
They spent like $20 million on it, which apparently in the budgetary concerns for the military, that's not a lot. So it wasn't like, to me it sounds like a lot, but I guess they were like, to them it was like, we'll throw $1 million at it this year.
I'd love to have a $20 million in my bank account.
Yeah,
seems like I could do a lot with that.
Yeah, you could bring it.
Not
bring
the
it my
point,
way.
Bridget. Not the point, Bridget.
But so then it started in the Cold War, and then once the Cold War was starting to end in the 90s, when Bill Clinton was president, I guess there was some sort of mandate that he passed saying that the government had to be a little more forthcoming about the things they were doing, that the military had to be. Yeah. So there was a big Nightline expose on it. And I guess certain people in Congress decided that it wasn't, some people thought it was against God. They thought it was unethical, which years ago, prior to that, rewind back to 20 years, people in Congress were like, let's do it. Let's find out. Fast forward to 20 years later, when they stopped doing it, those people and the new regime, I guess, they just believed that it was of shadow. Some people were concerned that it was wrong to be doing it.
There's also the fact that there's people that didn't want to lose their stars because, there's obviously I'm not a general, but I'm aware that when there's intel, you're getting intel from multiple sources, and that there were some people that believed wholeheartedly in the remote viewing aspect of this, that they felt that could be the sole source of intel, which was never meant to be.
No, it was just meant to be in conjunction with.
To add to help assist with. So I think that's also where it kind of went derailing, because there was an interview that I heard where they were like, you know what? A couple of the guys were so insistent that information was true, where the remote viewers were saying, we can't guarantee this. Like, we think we're onto something, but we can't say for sure. We're not 100% sure. But they were like, no, we're going to present this information. And it's like they bit themselves in the ass with that.
Yeah, and some of the people involved walked away from the government side of it too before it all shut down, because they thought it was turning into a three-ring circus. They were starting to bring in all these psychics, and yet they weren't using the protocols, because that's what we're talking about. Is these people set up protocols.
It's very structured.
Very structured. So that way your imagination doesn't get in the way of what you're actually receiving. Right? You want to explain it? Yeah, because you know this really well.
Well, I'll do my best. Okay, so one thing I realized in trying to organize my research was you can't talk about the what remote viewing is without talking about the how it's done. And when you talk about the how and the what, you are also talking about, you're just jumping into unknowable things territory. So no matter what I do, I'm going to very quickly venture into like, how does it work? Can't really say. But okay, so what it is, it's like a perceiving process as opposed to like a thinking process where you're managing your attention. And it's like you're working with your unconscious to gather information from the collective unconscious, or some would even say the matrix. And you're gathering information and then you're utilizing your consciousness and your memories to create labels to that information. So from like a more like the CIA would have a target, for example. So maybe they'd want to find a missing person, and so that would be the target. Well, maybe they would use a remote.
But the remote viewer didn't know what they were looking for, right?
Oh, it depends if you're doing like a test or if you're doing. I'm sure in the CIA they might say
It's a person.
we need to find a bomb and it's somewhere in Russia. Like they might say something like that, and we think maybe it's underground, and then the remote viewer might be able to discover like, okay, I'm seeing like certain. That really wasn't what I was gonna say, so I don't have like a perfect example for that, but it's more like they would maybe say, okay, I see like a crane and there's like a structure around it, and so we can identify that it would be in this location or whatever. But what I was more of trying to get at, I don't really remember, but okay, so it's actually a right-brained activity.
There you go.
And you use the left brain for more of the analytical side of it, but that's where you have to be really careful, and that's where a lot of people kind of get like, that's kind of where a lot of people realize they're not really that great at this skill because they're maybe too imaginative, or their ego wants to get involved and they want to like lock down and say, okay, I know what the answer is, I know what it is. And it's actually a much more I'm also trying to speak from a place of somebody who attempted some of this with like took lessons on it. So anyway, pausing. I'm so overheated. Alright, lots of ice. Lots of ice. Alright. In case for some reason editing this back together seems a little obvious, we're just gonna call it out now. We had to take a quick break.
Oh yeah.
But we're back.
And we're back. This is how they describe it. All ideas and things are in this time, in this universe, or in this time continuum, shall we say. They exist in this matrix. And their template, the identity, like, let me see here, sort of the wavelength. They exist as patterns of information within this matrix. And they train a person's unconscious to seek out a specific pattern. And a person has a very distinct, like, almost like a spike in the information that they see. And what also to say is that when they go and they have a target, they are using all of their senses. Like sometimes they're going to see things, so they're going to sketch out some of what they're seeing. And you were telling me they have a time limit that they have, like, so that way their mind doesn't
over. The mind, like after 3 seconds, that's when imagination really tries to insert itself.
See, you knew that. I didn't know that. And then a concept or an idea is more like, that's how you can tell the difference between what's real and what isn't. A concept or idea, like let's say evil, is something that's all over the place. Like you can't really, like it doesn't have like a tangible feel to it. It just has like little little dots everywhere. Whereas, like I said, a person has like a major spike, and that events in time will change. They can be big changes, like ripple effects in the world, like the birth of someone or the death of someone. Like the birth of Hitler, he said, was a major spike, you know, and then, or like the birth of Gandhi or the death of Gandhi, so forth and so on. So what's about the what and the how? Like, how did that work? Because you tried it.
Well, I did try it. I love that. My main fascination with remote viewing is probably like, because it's a skill that I really want to have. Yeah. And when I realized it was something that pretty much anybody could learn how to do, doesn't mean everyone's going to be good at it, but pretty much anyone can learn like the protocol and the skill set on how to do it. I was like, okay, how do I sign up? So I did find an old video to take a lesson. And I'm not gonna say yet like what it was or who ran it or any of that stuff, but I will say that I went through. They had a target. It was in like an envelope. There was people taking a class. They took us through this protocol where it's like very specific things that you write out and like little things that you draw out, and you have to be very specific about your pen being on the paper and being alert and all this stuff. And then at the end, you draw for like 10 seconds and then you find out what's in the envelope. And so as I'm going through the motions of this, they're reminding you, like, you know, you have to, if something like something interjects itself visually, to put that in the trash pile, because that's imagination, especially if you've pondered. Because they say that's like really the biggest challenge for most remote viewers is how the ego wants to get involved, and the mind wants to just like clamp down on a like a mystery. It wants to solve it, you know. And a lot of times when you're remote viewing and you're like writing all this stuff down, like it really makes absolutely no sense at first. So anyway, so I went through this process. And I'm writing down colors and feelings and textures and dimensions and all this stuff. And then I draw. So you were talking about how, like, you know, a remote viewer maybe sees like a spike or whatever. It's very easy, apparently, for remote viewers to determine a mountain, because it's really kind of an odd thing to have a triangle occur in nature. So believe it or not, I drew a triangle and a swirl, and it was freaking Mount Everest. It was a mountain and clouds.
That's really cool.
And so, guys, I 100% got this right, and it blew my mind, because I didn't feel like I was doing anything. I wasn't in some special state. I wasn't feeling woo-woo. I was literally just following these instructions, this protocol. I was like very strict about it, and it worked. And so for me, even though I only tried, you know, like a couple, there was enough to it that I was like, okay, I would like to learn more about it. Now, I haven't pursued it further, but I do think that there's something to at least this technical remote viewing process. I don't know about the other stuff, but
that's what
I'm interested.
That's what they were saying, was that there's a lot of what, like, you'll get a visual aspect of it. You can get a sensory feel of like, you can also get like feelings if it's a person.
I got
like
a little bit of a feeling. I never saw anything visually.
Yeah, they said everybody's different with it just a little bit, but like there's, and if
Well,
people
they would specifically in this one discouraged you from seeing things.
Interesting.
I don't know if it's because of the imagination aspect or what, but they really tried to get you away from seeing things.
Yeah, and they were saying that certain people really do have a talent for it, and other people, it's like liken it to music. Like, not everybody can play the violin.
Yeah.
You know, like not everybody can, at 4 years old, get up and play the violin. What I found really interesting about all of this is all the different remote viewers that are kind of like mean girls about each other, but they all like the way they would just like, you did this and you did that and you exposed and whatever, you know. But every single one of them, like we were saying, these old stodgy guys, you know, that look complete, what you would call a square, I guess, basically. Like, you wouldn't think they would get into this at all. Yeah, complete military. They were military people. Generals, brigadiers, all of this. They all felt that there was something more to this world. They came away with it, with that. They came away from that with that feeling. All of them, they said it made them believe in a higher power. It made them believe, and because they would sense these entities, they would sense, some people have said that they sensed divine beings, both good and bad. And one man said, Joe McGonigal, I think it is, he said that he walked away after 19 years of doing it. He was, he knew that we're basically living in two worlds, both the spiritual, I'm trying to find, here it is. He said, we have 1 foot in the physical and 1 foot in the spiritual. And to ignore the experiences on the spiritual side would basically be being tantamount to cutting off your left leg. And he was saying, it's just what you and I always say.
Yeah.
There's so much more. And what they said, they were asked, all three of these guys, they were asked if it made them like turn away from religion. And they said no. It actually made them believe in it more. But they felt that, each and every one of them felt that man twisted the words of what it was supposed to be. They actually one of the men, I think it was Len
Like
Buchanan.
almost like they went more spiritual, but pulled away from organized religion.
Exactly. It was organized religion that they started to
Yeah.
have a problem with. And they said, where's this at? This one guy, I think it was Len Buchanan. He said, he was like, he would have to, his targets would be Colombian drug lords, Saddam Hussein, all these really bad. And he said, it just give you such a bad feeling. And then one day he was like, can I please see someone good? Can you please give me a target, of something? And they were like, suck it up, you're a soldier, basically. And then the next day they gave him this target, somebody in an envelope. They didn't tell him. They just said it's a person. And he's like, okay. So he sat down. He said, as soon as he started doing it, he's like, whatever it is, whoever this is, he didn't do it. And then he didn't know who they said. And then he said he just felt like he was glowing. And they gave him Christ, is who they gave him. And they all said,
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, they said he was a true person. And he said he had never in his life felt like he met him. Because, what it is you can go through time. Now, this is going to kill people a little bit here. But time is it's not linear, right? So, you can go back, you can be in the present. Now, going to the future, predictive, that's messy, and I'll get into that in a second.
Let me say this. Remote viewing allows the person to accurately gather information about persons, places, and events anywhere in space and time.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, right.
That's just a little ditty on that.
But that's what he said. He said that remote viewing Christ, he never felt anyone so holy in all of his life. And they went back, and these people remote viewed Buddha, Muhammad, and they said they were all real. And they all came from a very similar, their messages were very similar. But they really felt man took their messages and twisted them to control the masses.
Well, I would think twisted, and some of them just straight up not understanding them.
Exactly. I think it's a little bit of what we call clearance. Not everyone is meant to understand certain things. But this is what they said was really interesting, to go back to having your foot in, that we live in two worlds. He said, it is your choice. This is what we always talk about. You have the choice. Yeah. What do you do with this knowledge? How do you live in this,
that is very Matrix.
Isn't it?
Yeah. And it's interesting that they refer to this, what is it been called? God, I have so many notes. It's crazy.
I know, you guys, we have books and books. Look, I have tabs, and it's still not helping.
They discovered a non-material library of information which contains data and everything in both physical and non-physical universe.
And they said it's like a library card. Yeah, that's the Matrix. They're it's like a library card. You can go and you can but you just have to allow yourself to open up your mind a little bit. This world that we live in, the physical world, is heavy, and it just weighs us down. And the greatest to make you believe that world isn't that we aren't these spiritual beings as well is, I think, robbing you of what this life could be. Does that make sense?
100%. I mean, I think
sometimes
you and I both have had moments in our life where we felt like we were robbing ourselves a bit because of choices we were making. And that
absolutely.
There was something I wanted to add to that. And unfortunately, my brain feels like it's very unconscious right now.
Let me see. We were talking about the one thing they all agreed on.
Well, it was just that it was the unconscious. It's that Carl Jung had a lot to say about this. If you're having a hard time when we start to go to the more esoteric aspects of this, which honestly, you could do remote viewing and not have any belief in any of the spiritual stuff whatsoever, and you would be able to remote view if it's something you have a natural skill for.
A couple of these guys were atheist. Yeah, I mean,
exactly. And that if you're having a difficult time going down that rabbit hole with us, well, then think about it from the psychological standpoint, the implications there of the unconscious and the conscious. And then maybe the biggest stretch would be, stretch number one would be, okay, the idea of a collective unconscious. But if you can get behind the idea that there's a collection of information that the collective can access, then you can build from there. Because I feel like to remote view, you need to at least be open enough for that. But maybe not even just to remote view. Maybe just to live a good life. To see how we're all connected. And I feel like we can see it in nature. I think when you see like flocks of birds or schools of fish or salmon going back to their original
And look
place
what their
of
instinct
birth.
is.
Right.
Right?
We call it instinct, but also there's cat feeder. Very loud. But there's also the fact that fish are swimming as a collective and making themselves look like one fish. And they're moving, like, you know, those videos of the birds moving in like these beautiful, intricate patterns. There's something about that to me that just screams that it's there's something inherently natural about this process. There's what's up?
That's what a lot of the scientists, the military people on this Nightline special that was part of the expose of it. Even the military people, the former head of the CIA, he said there is definitely something to this. There's too much. It's like what I always say. When something keeps happening, it becomes scientific. That means there is something there. But they just didn't understand it. They're like, we don't understand it. We don't have enough information.
It doesn't belong in the intelligence sector. It needs to continue to be studied. Like, we don't fully understand this, and there's something there. But the CIA is not the place for that to be done.
And they also said that they've worked a lot with, but they could find people that were missing. Yeah,
it's not that they could never, like, utilize, but to do the actual study of it.
Yeah.
Because they find people, the police use it.
What were they saying? It shouldn't be militarized, though. It shouldn't be a weapon. And now the thing is that they will deny that it's still going on. Some people think the government's still doing it, though, secretly, like it's become something else. So what they will say, the CIA will say, or the people that used to be involved in like Project Stargate, or they have a bunch of different names. They were like, well, as far as we know, our program stopped. And you can tell, like, when you watch these interviews or you listen to these interviews, they're very cagey about what they say, you know, like they're like very, very careful. And then finally the interviewer goes, if it was going on and you knew, you wouldn't tell me anyway, would you? And they're like, nope. Nope.
A couple other things people could look into is the Monroe Institute.
Oh.
She already mentioned Project Stargate. Also, Cognitive Sciences Lab, CSL. It's another thing to look into. We already said Stanford Research Institute. One thing I wanted to say when I was talking about the birds and the fish and how it's inherently natural. Evidence suggests retrieval of data from the collective unconscious is an automatic, ongoing, natural function, a built-in info source that enables all living things and creatures to survive. I couldn't say where exactly I got this from, and it's not even a quote, but point being that I've heard it said that if you go to New Zealand, the oh my God, say the word.
Aboriginals?
Aboriginals.
Okay.
This would be like a really natural process for them.
I grew up in Oklahoma. Native Americans, that's a natural sort of shamanistic.
Well, in the Western world, we're very busy in we're very conscious in terms of activity. And it's almost like too busy for us to pay attention. But think about dreams. That is the language of the unconscious. So we're still, if you're dreaming, I venture to say most people, even if they don't remember them, are dreaming because
I think so
your
too.
Unconscious has to be screaming at you.
Yeah.
Has to be.
Yeah.
But it's like the language of dreams.
Something that was interesting, one person in particular, Ed Dames, went on and has done lots of other, he's like likes to dive in. They used to call him Dr. Doom, they said, in the CIA because he always saw he's like, oh, I think it's going to go bad. He kept seeing some sort of cataclysmic, almost religious thing happening, which that's what
it sure feels doomsday these days, doesn't it?
Certainly. I sort of think we're in the second phase of the apocalypse, but that's probably another episode.
Words I've never heard Marshelle speak until today. Tell me more. Phase 2.
Phase 2. I'm sure the locusts are coming. Anyway.
Like some did, for real.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Like
And
recently.
the rivers were red in Russia because
Yeah.
of some sort of thing. I don't know, but that's been happening for a while. There's always like plankton or something.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of, some people would say that there's a negative aspect to this. And I know that some people did go crazy doing this but it's they already had a bit of an ego, like to where like, and they said what it is if you have something buried in your subconscious, then if you're opening up your conscious and that subconscious has been waiting for 20 years to say to you, blah, 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 it can take over and it can become overwhelming.
I feel like when I started to awaken, if you will, spiritually, I felt a little crazy there, but it wasn't because of any sort of, I think you're actually bringing up 2 points.
I am.
And that is, yes. And so there's the dark aspect of the remote viewing potential there, but then there's also how people handle it. And there could be a lot of different factors into why people cannot handle remote viewing. And one of them can be dark factors. And I think another could be more from a psychological standpoint, like this person is just not in a place where they can handle that kind of a paradigm shift.
Right. Because I was listening to this interview with Father Malachi Martin, who was this true exorcist. He was,
Rest in peace.
yeah. Oh, I would have loved to have interviewed him. Gosh, that guy. This is a
So
little Irish
sweet.
guy. God, he sounded amazing.
We
but
listened to some interviews of his.
Yeah, with Ed Dames, and he actually said that he likened. But after talking to Ed Dames, he was like, "Okay, I get what you're doing," but he was saying you need to put precautions on yourself to protect yourself because it's kind of like a Ouija board where you are inviting something dark in, which will piggyback onto what I was saying about predictive remote viewing. You can't really do that, and I think it's to be accurate. You could do it, but
I think just predictive means what though?
predictive
So we
means
know
in the
what-
future, looking in the
Got
future
it.
to predict what's going to happen. Let's say, and what I was getting at, what it reminded me of, is what I said with tarot cards. In that, or the way I view tarot cards is that, and the way I learned is, if you continue on this path, then this is what could happen. You know, but now if you make a different choice, then this is going to happen.
It's a
or it's gonna turn.
potential. It's a potential
Exactly.
future.
Exactly. So I
But
think
there could
that's
be other potential futures depending on choices you make.
exactly. I think it
Yeah.
all comes down to choice. So that's kind of what all of this really was about. Was it just kind of proved our point that see, there's more to life.
Yeah, but
It's
for sure.
fascinating.
Yes, and the fact that if you think everything we're saying about the other side of life is bullshit, okay, fine. You can't really discount remote viewing as a thing.
The U.S. military. I
that
mean,
has
you can look
value.
At it. You can look at it scientifically. You know, you don't have to look at it. But that's what was interesting is some of these people didn't even believe in God, and they
Right.
all, you say God and people freak out. They didn't believe in a higher power. They didn't believe in
Yeah.
the universe, if you want to call it that, or whatever. But they all came away, as I said, with this knowledge of there's something out there, and they felt like divine intelligence, both negative and good. Just we live in two worlds. That there are entities out there. Now, they did say, one guy said he definitely saw aliens. Another guy said, I've never personally ever experienced that. I've experienced entities or beings that might be perceived as aliens. And he said, but I didn't feel like it was an alien to me. You know, this was one of the
Well,
military
that
guys.
someone was probably an alien. I'm just kidding.
Exactly.
He was like trying to get us off the track. I'm just kidding. No, I think that is a thing though too, is interpretation, because when you're remote viewing and you're pulling up this information from the unconscious, you're building your analytical, your mind is analyzing it based off of your own experiences and memories. So that, not to say that that's going to, it's not going to maybe make something be different than it is. It's just going to color the interpretation a bit. Like if you're looking at it through a different lens.
Yeah,
but I think ultimately you're going to come up with, there's going to be information that multiple remote viewers that are good at what they're doing, looking at the same target, they're going to come up with some of the same information no matter what. They just are. If they're good at what they're doing, it's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like we say, there's charlatans out there. There's whatever. So you have to but it's just, this is a fun, interesting topic. It's real. You guys, look it up. You can message us about it. We can talk more about it. Or, what have you heard about it? I mean, this is the stuff we love.
There's a lot more interpretations of remote viewing out there that are way more, to me, what sounds like clairvoyance.
Yeah.
Or people would start to talk about maybe biolocating, or there's other realms of this that I have not even gone down those rabbit holes, but I think you and I were specifically interested in
the technical.
Why was the technical aspect, but why was the government interested in this?
Yeah.
There has to be a reason why they were studying this for so long and put so much information in it. And I want to know what, after all those years with rigorous scientific studying, what did they determine was not only a protocol for delving down this rabbit hole, but what did they decide? Did they decide it's legit? Did they decide they need to learn more?
Now, some people try to discredit it because it scared them. And also, like you were saying earlier, they didn't want to be known. They didn't want to go down with the ship. You know what I mean? They didn't want to be discredited. And also, as these different men have said, the FBI or whoever is not going to admit that they helped them solve a case. Because some people made fun of them. There's been a movie. There was a movie. Was it The Men Who Stare at Goats? That was making fun of. But it was that phase when Ed Dames walked away from it too, because they were getting a little too, woo woo about it and losing the credibility of it, and they were just turning into these pot smoking.
Did you hear the maybe gunshot, probably firework?
Just no.
Just now. Oh.
Did you hear my dog just a second ago?
No.
Yes. Boston is ever present.
We are most definitely still in our respective homes because it's still technically Corona time.
Quarantine.
So, yeah.
We're probably going to be doing this for a few more weeks.
Yeah.
But, what do you think?
I'm trying to remember if I remember watching Men Who Stare at Goats, but I don't remember my impression of it. Or
I don't think I was impressed.
I don't think it really struck me, and I don't think I walked away and could have told you that topic was remote viewing. It just didn't. I don't remember anything about it.
I'm sorry, cut out. There's another movie, Suspect Zero, that I think's on Netflix with Carrie-Anne Moss and Ben Kingsley, and that's supposed to be about the whole remote viewing and I think remote influencing, actually. But the one thing I wanted to say, maybe we can kind of close on it a little bit, is that what they said was, you're learning to connect, to get a conscious connection with your subconscious mind, and that part of your subconscious that knows everything. And it's basically we just have to get out of our own way. And that's kind of what you and I believe 100%, is that there's a part of us that knows everything. But do you allow yourself, can you get out of your own way to live? It's scary. It's scary to access that part of yourself, to surrender to that, or maybe to even believe that there's some divine intelligence out there other than, what you see.
Well, I think as you're exploring the unconscious and you realize that you are kind of receiving information, it's really unclear where that information is coming from. Mm-hmm. Even as I was going through the exercises where I would have an actual target, you're writing down these words and you're like, okay, what is, all right, blue, okay, blue again, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever, there's no, and then
rhyme
you're
or
drawing,
reason for
I
it.
draw a triangle and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, and then you realize, oh, I'm actually getting it right. How? Because you're not in some special state, which just says to me, it's always percolating, and we just have to quiet our conscious mind and listen.
Yeah.
And maybe that's meditation. Maybe that happens when you're jogging.
Right.
I mean, I know for me, I really need to work more at quieting my brain. I really do. This is kind of what I walked away from this experiment knowing. Please.
I got one. I've told you about this before, and it just reminded me of it listening to what you're saying, the automatic writing, the unconscious.
Yes.
I did this thing, an old friend of mine suggested. She was brilliant. She was like, you should try this. What did she say? It quiets the unconscious. It's an Einstein method.
Wait,
Einstein
it quiets the conscious.
Oh, so, yeah, quiets
Right?
the conscious to allow
Yeah.
you to access. Let me see what she said, actually. Well, I'll go to it in a second because it's a text. You write 3 days in a row for 4 hours at a time. I did this for 4 hours at a time at exactly the same time of day. And it's automatic writing. You're just writing, whatever comes to mind. Doesn't have to make any sense. You don't want it to make any sense. If you got nothing in your brain, if nothing's there, I would write, I got nothing. And then like a song lyric would come in my mind, or like whatever. So you just keep writing it, whatever it is. And then you put it aside and you don't look at it for like a week or two. You go back and you look at it, and there's so much there. There would be messages there. There would be things, maybe memories from childhood. But what it's supposed to do is raise your level of consciousness. And for some people, it would take you to the next level, basically, as they would put
Yeah,
it.
it's going to get all that bullshit out of the way.
Right. And to
Because
quiet
we have
the
all
mind.
of these tapes, if you will, running through our brain at any given moment. You went over it really fast, so I just want to repeat it. Because it almost is hard to believe that you actually did this, that anybody would actually do this.
Yeah, I know. I had
3 days
time.
in a 3 days in a row.
You do
the
it
same. I want to say it.
Oh,
My
okay, go
turn.
ahead. All right,
3
go ahead.
days in a row at the same time every day. Say it was noon. From noon to 4 p.m., Marshelle sat down for 4 freaking hours straight and just wrote. And she did that 3 days in a row, people.
And you know
wanted
what? And they said, it sounds crazy.
Emphasize
doesn't
that. Not that it sounds crazy. It sounds very disciplined. And I think it's amazing, and I look up to you for doing that because I think I could use a little more discipline in my life.
This is what she said. You do it consistently over a 3-day period, so it allows access to higher knowledge within us and from our spiritual guides or team or whatever you want to believe that is. And some people would have like a vision or like something, they would go someplace. And I definitely experienced something. I mean,
Was it like a dreamlike state?
something like that. Like all of a sudden it's like, boom, you're not really there anymore. And it almost like you get transported someplace else. And I'm not going to get into it because it was deeply personal. But it all made me continue to believe, to continue to walk down this path of where I was going, of listening to my higher self, of trying to be my true self, to align with that.
Was that the dog?
No, that was a really loud
Oh, I
hot
was like,
rod.
did your dog just growl?
No. But it definitely, I mean, it's amazing if you got the time and you want to try it. And I mean, I mean, I would go back and look at it and be like, wow, I really like that song. Like I would have like page after page of like
I want to
song
say
lyrics.
this. If you're having a difficult time with this concept of what her advisor told her about, like her team and this, that, and the other thing, or like going to a higher consciousness or whatnot, remember that we have a dream life. We have a sleep. When we go to sleep and our consciousness goes to bed, we're very active. There's a lot going on. Our unconscious is bubbling with all sorts of stuff for us. And to me, what Marshelle is saying this exercise is doing is allowing us to access that while awake. We're awake, we're getting our conscious out of the way, and we're allowing, you're allowing the unconscious to bubble up into the conscious, basically. That ties into remote viewing very much, very much. And with remote viewing, there's a structure you can follow. Both of these things are ways to explore the unconscious and the conscious. And I think that's a fascinating
And it was
arena.
Einstein who did it. The thing that I did. So, and he was one of the most brilliant minds in the world. So, and he himself said, you can't look at science the exact, like in a flower, in a shell, like the symmetry. You can't look at that and not see that there's some sort of divine intelligence, involved. Now, you don't have to believe that. And we're not trying to make you believe that, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, I definitely just want people to open their minds, because there's so much to be explored, and I think people get really scared of it because we can't understand all of it. It's the unknowable things aspect, and honestly, we're not going to stop talking about these things, so get used to it.
Yeah.
And if you have friends that you like to talk about these things with, tell them about our podcast, because I definitely think there's people hungry for this type of conversation, and we want you to be, messaging us and emailing us your ideas and your thoughts. So
Right. We want to be that community, basically, of like, guys, what do you think about this? And this is the experience.
grounded weirdos.
Of grounded weirdos. That should be the hashtag. Grounded weirdos.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. I'm okay with that. I'm a big nerd.
Yeah.
I know it. I admit it. My ear hurts right now. I don't
I know,
have a
mine
problem
too.
with it.
Because we're
If you're
having
watching, I'm doing weird shit.
Same. We each have double
guys.
there's earbuds under headphones because of the way we have to do our audio.
It hurts so bad. My ears are really, really, really small. So it's hopefully Bridget can hear me. But that's the thing. We want it to be this community of like-minded. We know there's people out there that believe the way we do, and see, I think it all ties in. And if you don't believe in it, maybe this will allow you to see life a little differently. Maybe it won't. Maybe it'll, I don't know. I challenge you to give it a shot.
I feel like I would love to continue my own personal studies on remote viewing. I would love
it.
I would love to I'd love to have this as a skill. I don't know how much time and energy I'm going to invest in it, but I'm telling you, I'm interested. It's intriguing. The more I learned, the more I was intrigued. So I wouldn't be surprised if at some point in the future we talk more about this. And I would encourage you guys
to try it if you want.
Yeah, try it, or maybe share with us. Maybe you can email us, sorta@gmail.com with your own discoveries, or if you attempt any sort of I don't know, remote viewing class, or if you have an experience with it where you feel like, okay, this is legit, I tried it and this was my result. Please tell us about it.
I have two things to say about that, and I'll wrap that up. Ed Dames has a class. You can Google that online, where you can learn. I think some of it's free. And the other guys that were they all mean girl each other, like I said. They were asked what they think of it, and they said they hoped that would work. They would hope that everyone in the world would start doing that, because they thought it would elevate the consciousness of the world.
Yeah.
Look at that.
I felt like that was the conclusion for a lot of them, is you can use this to better yourself.
Yeah.
At its best.
Secondly, what I was going to say, I know some of you who watch or listen to our show are into tarot cards and do tarot cards. When I was doing them, still to this day, I can look back at a reading and I can remember what exactly I felt. To me, it's similar to a remote viewing feeling from what you're describing to me, the smells. I can remember the impressions, the feelings of if I was reading something. So I don't know, somehow to me that just seems to kind of tie in of it's not a foreign concept, that if you're focused on something, you can access that part of yourself.
Well, since you're going there, you know what it reminded me a lot of? And this, I don't know how to stitch this together. It actually reminded me a lot of our acting training. I was just really struck by, okay, so when we're acting, we're getting out of our own way, and we're this vessel for inspiration, if you will. And
letting the scene play you.
Right. And yes, you're saying these words, but we're not predetermining how we're going to act it out. We're allowing the scene to play you, as you said. And I feel like a lot of this stuff bubbles up from the unconscious, this inspiration.
It does.
And these impulses. And you're not making a decision about it. You're not thinking about it and then analyzing it and deciding, yeah, that feels good. You're just doing it from impulse immediately. And that's very much what this felt like to me.
Yeah.
Where you're yes, maybe you're in a zone, but you're not in I didn't go somewhere else. I wasn't in a state. I was just focused. And
that's what I'm saying. It's a focus.
Amazingly subtle. It was just there, and I was just trusted it, and it was very simple. It's all very simple.
I
Now,
think life is
maybe
simple.
I'm very gifted at it. Me. And so it's just really easy for me. I'm kidding. But
She's flipping her hair if you're not watching.
I love to think that I am natural at it.
But yeah, I think maybe we should try it some more. Like, I'll try it, and we can talk about it later if we want. If you guys want to. So anyway,
That's that.
I think that's that, guys.
Welcome
We're gonna
back.
keep
Season
diving
2.
into these. If you can see me, I'm doing this weird. We're gonna like
She's swimming through air.
swimming through air. That's pretty much what I'm doing. We're gonna keep diving into the unknowable things. You know, so shadow people.
I was just gonna say, we keep mentioning
I think
this
that's gonna be the
concept
next
of
one.
shadow people.
Shadow people. I've seen that,
Like, what?
but I
does
don't know if
that
it's
even-
what they're talking about.
What
I've
does that
seen
even
shadows.
mean?
Yeah,
Why
what
do
is
we
that?
keep hearing about it online? Is there anything to it? Is shadow people just ghosts? Is shadow people entities? Is it something bad? Is it something good? Probably not.
Yeah, right. I don't think it's good.
Shadow people doesn't sound very good.
What I've seen, not. I don't know, but what I've seen is what people are referring to online as shadow people, but we shall find out.
So if any of you have experience with what you've decided you would call shadow people, please write us, because we will be covering that topic very soon, maybe in the next episode.
It might even be the next episode. We're going to have guests. We're going to have, it's going to be a fun year.
Yeah, in the
Fun
future.
season.
Maybe not the next episode.
No,
guest.
no.
Maybe.
No.
Maybe.
Could be.
Maybe. Maybe not.
We're in the moment.
But I'm Bridget.
I'm Marshelle.
This is Yeah, Sorta, Kinda, Season 2, Episode 17.
Woohoo! High five.
Like us, subscribe, rate us,
Please.
give us some reviews, and share with your friends.
Good, nice reviews. If you don't like us, just don't listen. You know,
Yeah, to
come
that
on,
one
how can you not
asshole.
like us?
That one-star asshole on Apple Podcasts.
I'm like, who was that?
Yeah, I feel like
I'm
it's
suspicious
somebody.
of that.
I feel like it's somebody from our past.
I think so. But anyway, all right. We love you guys. It's really good
Love
to be
you.
back. We love you.
Mwah.
All. Love you, Bridge.
Love you.